Good evening, everyone. You're very welcome along to this week's Transfer Talk podcast here on the Anfield Agenda. I'm your host, Craig, and joining me this week, I've got Dave and Chris. And gents, it's been a fairly quiet week with the World Cup being on and that, so there's a couple of little bits and pieces that I've managed to pull out for us to have a chat about. And Dave, the first thing I want to bring up is Marco Asensio, and I apologise that I'm laughing as I'm saying that, but what makes me laugh is more the fee that's been rumoured, and it's in and around £156 million. Surely this is nailed on.
I was reading there as well that we've had a £158.9 million or €180 million bid rejected.
Surely we'll go back with a 200 million bid.
Yeah, why not? Like, you know, if you're going to do 180 million, just go into 200 million and just go all out. Yeah, but it's on a few decent sources as well. So it's been on Sky. Well, I don't know how decent Sky is, but it's also been on the Mirror and the Independent as well. There's no smoke without fire, but it's going to be certainly interesting. But I can't see Liverpool spending 160 million quid on a player, and then what's he going to be looking for wages wise? Another 250, 300 grand a week? No, I can't see it happening.
It looks very strange. And you mentioned Sky Sports. Well, I have seen Guillaume Balaguer do a little chat on this on Sky Sports, and he seemed to think that there was nothing to it. Like that. Well, not that there was nothing to it, but it most certainly won't be happening.
So there's definitely something to it then.
Yeah, well, absolutely. If it's been on Sky Sports News, firstly, it's appeared on Twitter. So that's rule number one. Chris, do you know what makes me think this is absolute bullshit? I mean, you see the manager that's come in and joined Real Madrid now, obviously Lopetegui, and excuse me if I pronounce that name incorrectly, but so he's just joined, and his track record is working with the Spanish underage kids going through and the young players. It seems like Marco Asensio is a dream for him, a player that he'd be well used to working with and the type of character that he's dealt with time and time again. So you'd imagine that he's top of his list to keep at Real Madrid.
Does, just makes perfect sense. I think we're looking at the sort of downturn of a couple of the forwards. There are quite a few players at Real Madrid, so I think it's time for the younger crop to start coming through as well. So, I mean, you only have to look at Benzema as the starting point there, don't you? So you can see Asensio perhaps taking that spot long term. It kind of makes you feel better about the result in Kiev, doesn't it? When you lose the European Cup final to a club that can reject €150 million bid for a substitute, so it's puts things into perspective a little bit. Although I'm not convinced that bid was actually made. I don't see. You've got to look at it this way: we sold a very important first team player for 140 million, give or take a few million here or there. We're not going to go buy somebody else's substitute for more than that, are we? It just doesn't make sense. As much as I'd love to see him at Liverpool, I think he's a fantastic player. It's not going to happen, is it? Not. If it does, it's some kind of miracle. Something very strange at play. I just don't see it happening.
If it does happen, it means Klopp wasn't just on the Corona when he was over in Ibiza. I think he might have been going Diego Maradona style, perhaps.
Jägermeisters, bare minimum.
Keelers, yeah.
He might have even broken out and had a Baileys.
You can buy them. You can buy them buy bottles of Jägermeister at petrol stations in Germany. So guaranteed it was that.
That's nuts. You know what?
The little ones, yeah, they're in the supermarkets over here. Just when you go up to the till, little tiny ones, and they're only €2 pop.
Right next to the big bags of Lay's paprika crisps. Yes,
that's right.
I'm going way off topic here, but did you guys ever see some of the comedy sketches where people go up to the checkouts? I think this was done in America and the UK. So people go up to the checkouts with a shitload of booze and stuff like that, and then at the end they have a box of nappies or something, and then your woman says that's $200, and he goes, "Shit, I've only got $180," so they put back the nappies.
I've done it. I did it in an Asda once. for the crack.
I'd say all the short of doing is spitting on you, to be fair. Like, it's just...
I just got tutted at a lot by old women. That is...
It's all right, love. We can wash out the other ones. Relax. If we were to go back and throw money at Real Madrid, Chris, for a player of the ilk of Asensio, I would much rather we're throwing it down for Isco.
Yeah. I mean, even that money for Isco is a lot, I think, because it pretty much wipes out a massive chunk of whatever budget we've got. I don't. One player, I mean, it just doesn't seem a very Klopp thing to do. I know everybody's going to point to Van Dijk, but you're talking twice what Van Dijk cost. It's ridiculous money.
And we all know at least 20% of the Van Dijk fee was an apology.
Probably. And, said player breaks his leg, a month into the season, and then you're without him. And then right now, it's not about recruiting that one player who takes us forward. It's about recruiting those several, probably not quite as good, but equally as important players who are going to beef up our squad a little bit. So just, everything about it doesn't make sense to me.
Dave, if I was to say to you that we could fund this deal by moving on Danny Ings, what would you say?
What time does Danny want picking up?
Just touching on the Ings thing, what do you think? Like, it's obviously he's wants to leave the club. He's come out and said it. Klopp seems to have said that he's no problem with him leaving. I mean, you have to just give him a pat on the back and wish him the best.
Yeah, you do. Chris actually made a very good point on Twitter when he said if it was a player who was starting and if it was one of our star players that wanted to leave, would he get such a good reception? Probably not. No is the answer. We should be using Danny Ings if he wants first team football. You could see him working at Newcastle. Use him to get in Lascelles. Sorry. I think he's a very good centre back. He's someone that we need. And I'd imagine he's not going to come cheap. He'd probably cost north of 20, probably 25 million. But if you're putting Ings in as a sweetener, obviously bring that down then to probably 10 plus Ings or 15 plus Ings or something. And then you'd probably have a deal. That's where I'd like to see Danny Ings be used as maybe a make weight in another deal for a centre back.
I had a similar feeling actually for Divock Origi. I don't know who with or what for, but I just thought we could use him for something perhaps. And a lot of people seem to be of the mindset, Dave, that we might actually hang on to Divock Origi. But I think if somebody's to stay there, it'll be Solanke.
I think it'll be Solanke as well. But reports again coming out that he's going to be given the chance to resurrect his career, Divock Origi. I can say first of all, I don't think he's good enough for Liverpool. He did nothing at Wolfsburg last season. He had a good couple of maybe 3 or 4 games, at the end of last season. But apart from that, he was pretty poor in a bang average side as well. Usually, if you're a decent player in a bang average side, you stand out a bit, but he didn't at all. Dominic Solanke, I think, does have a future at the club. I think he'll definitely be there next season. The tribunal fee's only been settled now. Again, going on reports today. But I can't see where does Divock Origi fit into this team? Surely at his age as well, he's going to be wanting first team football, which he's not going to get.
And you're also blocking a pathway through for Ryan Brewster.
Yeah, exactly. And I'd much rather see Brewster's development than resurrecting the career of Divock Origi. He definitely, you can see Origi maybe going back to Germany or even the Dutch league or something like that. I think that's his level, his standard. Mid to low German team to, let's say, a decent Dutch team, but he's not for me. I'm sorry, unless he does something amazing this preseason, lights it up completely. I can't see it happening.
The eternal optimist in me always thought maybe we could shoehorn him into the deal for Fekir somehow and convince Johnny Cuntylocks, Mr. Aulas, that he's a great player. Sure, it's a shame to let him go, but we really want Fekir, so we're willing to do it just for you.
Yeah, I can't see him being used as a make weight there. I don't think Leon would have any interest in him, and there's a reason for that as well, because he's probably just not good enough. Fekir again, what's happening? I don't know. Look what's happening there with Fekir. There's an extra 10 million gone up in his price now.
And 17 new managers as well being linked with him. We've Jose Mourinho, the latest name to be apparently brought up by Mr. Aulas.
Yeah, he had dinner with him or something like that. So interesting. I think this is just a smoke screen, to be honest with you. I still think Fekir will happen.
And Chris,
I'm confident.
we've seen in the papers this week, James Pearce of the Echo has come out and said that he believes Liverpool have walked away from the deal for Nabil Fekir. I think this is just bluffing myself, and I don't mean that James Pearce is bluffing. I fully believe that he's acting on what he believes to be honest input from somebody at the club. But to me, it's not dead. I'm not accepting it, Chris. It's not dead.
Again, I'll always just keep pointing out to nothing coming from the club itself. I can't get past that at all. I haven't been able to since the deal didn't finalise. The club have really stayed quiet. They still are quiet. James Pearce is going to have links to people in the club who are going to tell him snippets, and maybe the talk coming out of the club is intentional, that they're walking away, because if they publicly and vocally retain interest, and he does go and he scores a couple of goals in the next round of the World Cup or something, all of a sudden we're looking at whatever deal we're trying to create out the back of whatever problems we found on his medical. All that becomes sort of second to the whole sort of fanfare around the player. This supposedly great player, this future star that we're trying to sign, and all of a sudden whatever deal we're trying to create for him just goes out the window completely. So like I said, I still don't think it's dead. I'm not convinced it's dead. The lad had his picture taken in Liverpool shirts after signing a contract. No way on God's green earth are Liverpool walking away from that.
Have you seen the new images on Twitter?
The what, sorry?
Did you see the images that popped up on Twitter yesterday?
Yeah. And everything about it. Yeah, and I don't blame anybody for going along with the idea that it is dead. If James Pearce comes out and says that he believes that, Liverpool have officially walked away, that, it's up to you whether you believe that. That's fine, and I can fully understand that. But everything about it suggests that we're just being coy and clever here. And the one thing we have been good at in the last sort of couple of years throughout the transfer windows is actually being the cleverest person in the room at any given time. That's why we're getting these deals over the line. And I don't see this being any different.
There's another link that's popped up actually, Dave, in the past week or so. And this link isn't one that's appeared too much in the UK, but our fellow Christian, who obviously lives in Sweden, so is a European like yourself, although obviously you're Irish. Oh, sorry, Chris. I don't mean to say we're all Europeans as if we're rubbing it in your face, mate. Brexit means Brexit and all that, but Christian is based in continental Europe, shall we say.
It's the most Brexit thing I'd ever heard, that was it.
It's okay. It's okay, mate. Brexit means Brexit. It's fine. As long as you put no borders up here in the north, it's all good. But anyway, moving back to the links, it's Emil Forsberg, Dave, we've seen linked in the continental press to Liverpool. And do you know what? That isn't a bad link to have.
No, I like him. He's a very intelligent midfielder stroke winger. For me, he stood out against... He stood out for Sweden this World Cup as one of their best players. Just a very, very intelligent young midfielder. When I say young, I think he's 25, 26. Had a good season with Leipzig last year. I think if you just look at it as a signing, would he improve the squad? Absolutely, he would. Does he make the starting 11 week in, week out? Probably not. But look at the options that are there now, and he does improve on what we already have. I think he was voted Swedish midfielder as well. Was it 3 years in a row or 3 years out of 4, something like that? Which is a fantastic achievement in itself. I like him. He looked good against Germany last Saturday. He really stood out. Strong. He's got a yard of pace as well, but just a very, very intelligent player, and can fit naturally into a lot of different positions, which Klopp, we all know, he loves.
Did you see the payback for from the Swedish guys towards the Germans when they qualified? Karma's a bitch, isn't it? Karma is an absolute bitch. I mean, we all seen what happened. There was a couple of videos floating around of the German bench being a bit boisterous, shall we say, when they scored the winner against Sweden. But as we said, karma has a way of coming around and biting them in the ass, Dave.
It certainly did. It certainly did yesterday. Yeah, there weren't too many dry eyes in the house over here in Germany. But fair play. The better team won. South Korea deserved to win, even though they didn't go through. But Germany were woeful, absolutely woeful. I don't know what Ozil was doing on the pitch ahead of Julian Brandt. It was as mind-boggling as his eyes.
Chris, just coming back to Emil Forsberg, we're obviously dealing with Mr. Aulas at the minute in regards to Nabil Fekir, but we have previous as well with Mr. Ralf Rangnick, so I imagine if we were to go back in for Emil Forsberg, it wouldn't be simple. He wouldn't make it easy anyway.
No, but money talks. In any of these deals for any player, money talks. And if the club wants the money or needs the money, and the other club is willing to pay it, and the player wants the move, that's all the ingredients, isn't it, for a transfer? I like the player, I really do. Much like Dave said, he's very clever, and I do like clever players. It's one of the reasons, I like Lallana and I like Firmino and I like Mane. They're considered in what they do on a pitch. Not everything's all about trying to smash the ball in from 30 yards every time they get the ball. He makes the right passes, the right runs. He is a very, very good player, and it's quite telling that he's won Player of the Year like 4 or 5 years in a row for his national side. So, and I think this is an interest that would quash anything with Fekir. I think if Fekir doesn't happen, we go for Forsberg. I don't think we're looking at both. I would say Forsberg would be a fallback from Fekir. I know, strictly speaking, not the same type of player, but I don't think that's how this works. We've got a lot of arms in our attack, haven't we? We don't go like for like. It is very fluid, and we can bring in one of many attacking players to join the ranks and fit them in one way or another. And we've already seen when we sign players, we don't necessarily sign them with a view to them doing exactly what they do for their club or their country, but just having a skill set that will work in our system in another way, maybe. So the fact that he's an intelligent player as well, perhaps, with that ability as well, perhaps goes a long way towards him doing something anywhere along the front three, maybe, and then look to bring in another player. So whereas Fekir is perhaps like having two players in one, where perhaps they'll look to have the actual two players rather than the one, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, it seems a realistic one. It's not going to, make big news around the world. It's not going to cause any massive eruption amongst the Liverpool fan base. But one thing's for certain, if we do go after him, we're getting a very good player. I do believe that. What kind of money were they talking about? I never actually saw any figures mentioned.
I honestly can't say that I've heard a figure from Christian anyway.
I'd say you'd be looking at 40 plus.
So he's still gonna cost somewhere in the region of what we were looking to pay for Fekir. So
a million miles away, yeah.
Oh yeah, but Fekir's now 70 million, gents. You're forgetting that the price has gone up 70%.
Well, that wouldn't be happening, would it?
He does seem like a very Klopp style signing, though, I have to say, Chris.
I'm struggling with what a Klopp style signing is these days. It seems very. I mean, when we look at a lot of the signings he's made, they seem to be very considered. He seems to want to wait for them, but he's also quite happy to go with the suggestion of the guys like Edwards and his crew at the club. He doesn't seem to have his mindset on one particular player. Now, where I think he's possibly got his mindset on Fekir, I think the club there is that possibility that the club are perhaps thinking, it's not worth the risk, and themselves found a new target in Forsberg. So I would suggest Forsberg probably isn't even a Klopp signing, but maybe an Edwards. A signing, I meant target, and maybe as an Edwards target, and that may take some convincing. But we've seen that happen with Salah, haven't we? And it's not beyond the realms of possibility that Klopp just says, "Yeah, okay, if it's a risk to bring Fekir in, and we can get this player in and get him in with enough pre-season to get him integrated into the side and get his conditioning right, then make it happen.
Chris, Dave, where do you think this might leave any potential deal for Sheridan Shaqiri then, if we're rumoured to be linked with Emil Forsberg? Although I've always said that I felt Fekir was interlocked with Sheridan Shaqiri, in that we only sign Shaqiri if we get Nabil Fekir.
I think for the money we're looking at with Shaqiri, I think it will be done anyway. 12 million in the bigger scheme of things is not a lot of money for a player of his quality. And again, reading reports, I think it's meant to be pretty close. And Christian also sent us over in the WhatsApp group that it is meant to be pretty close as well. I hope Shaqiri does happen. If it does happen at 12 million, absolutely all day long.
I feel like we're betraying Christian, by the way. I feel like we're cheating on him here, not having him on this podcast. This has been a podcast he's always been on. So Christian, if you're listening, it means nothing, buddy. It means nothing to me. I mean, just forget about it. They're not half the people you are, Christian.
Cheers, Craig.
Love you guys.
But no, like, for that money, 12, 13 million, again, Shaqiri improves with what we have there already, and it's about improving the squad for a long season. If we're going to be pushing, all going well, if we're going to be pushing in 4 competitions, we need a big squad. We need to go back to what Xavi Alonso said. We need 20 to 25 really, really good players, not just average players who's going to come in and slot in time and bits and pieces. Nearly world-class players. If we're going to compete, if we're going to close this gap on City, if we're going to take more points off them as well, and hopefully replicate and do one step better in the Champions League, you're going to need a hell of a big squad. We've seen in the Cups, Liverpool were no near in the Cup competitions, the domestic Cup competitions. If we're not going to win the league, Klopp needs to. I do think Klopp needs to be winning a trophy pretty soon. Whether that be an FA Cup and a League Cup would be brilliant. But he does need that squad size, yeah.
Chris, I've been saving the goalkeeper situation to last, so we've one more topic before that one, and it's emerged that Liverpool are apparently favourites to go and sign Sporting Lisbon's Gelson Martins. What's your thoughts on that, buddy?
I've banged on about him a little bit, haven't I, in recent podcasts. I really like the player. I've watched him since the very first time we were linked with him, which it's going back about 3 or 4 years ago now, when he was just a teenager. Again, he's just one of those players who seems to have all of the kind of attributes and the general skill set needed to thrive in a side like ours, and the way we play, the pace, the power, how direct he is. People will probably look at his numbers and think, is he prolific enough? Well, none of the players who play in our front three were prolific up until last season. I'm just looking at his skill set. He would work. And given, and I know you find this quite a difficult pill to swallow at the moment, don't you, Craig? Given his contract situation, he's going to be free.
The Rui Patricio deal has actually opened my eyes a little bit in this extent, Chris.
Yeah, it's just, that's life. It's the way it works, the way the world works, and we could quite easily land ourselves a very, 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 very good player for nothing. Of course, he will want a signing on fee. Of course, his agent will want to ramp his wages up as much as possible, given that he's free. Personally, if Liverpool have walked away from Fekir and we end up landing Martins, Forsberg and Shaqiri, I'm quite happy with that for a summer, providing we perhaps also dip in there for a goalkeeper. I mean, I would even ignore the fact that we haven't signed a centre-back. But I think with that number of attackers and that kind of attacking talent in unison throughout a season, I think it's a case of where we're going, we don't need defenders. So I think I'd be perfectly happy with that. I really would. I mean, let's bear in mind, guys, and as much as I've liked the look of Fekir when I've seen him over this season, especially since he became a prominent name, he's not really done it for a number of years. And we can say that about a lot of the players that we're looking at. So like Martins, for example, he's still a work in progress. just like Martins is. And if we can pick up Martins for nothing and perhaps looking at maybe a similar wage, similar signing on fee, it's just good business.
Chris, I can't make my mind up on Gelson Martins. I don't know whether I'm looking at a possible Juan Cuadrado or whether I'm looking at a possible Mo Salah. I just can't make my mind up on him.
Juan Salah, maybe, somewhere in the middle. I don't know.
Mo Cuadrado.
Mo Cuadrado. That's got a ring too, hasn't it? Watching him play, he kind of reminds me of Mane in the way he plays a little bit, to be honest. Kind of plays on the edge a little bit. He's going to give the ball away. He's going to try dribble past somebody and lose it, but he's going to do something quite amazing as well. And I think under the right tutelage, which I think Klopp will provide, I think he could be a top player. I really do.
Interesting. Look, gents, enough of the foreplay. It's time to move on to the main course, and that's the goalkeeping situation. Dave, I want to throw a name at you and see what you have to say about it. Gianluigi Donnarumma. And I think you know why I'm going this way. We've all seen what's happened with AC Milan. They received a 1-year European ban. They're going to appeal that to the Court of Arbitration for Sport in Lucerne, but he has to be available at the right price.
Yeah, there's no doubt he's a good keeper, and he's only 19 years old. The worry I have is that how much of a step back will Liverpool be in a position when he signs, because if he starts and if he's a first-team goalkeeper, we're going to have to compensate for his getting ready the Premier League, mistakes, and Liverpool can't afford that this season. Liverpool need to be pushing on. Does he come in maybe as a number 2 for the time being, because he is only 19 years old? But if we're going to be paying the money that we probably will be paying, anywhere between 40 and 60 million, he's not going to be sitting on the bench, and that's my worry. My worry with him is his age and maybe his rawness, because we just can't afford that this season. We need to be pushing on.
I've said on a couple of live streams that I've done that I would almost say to myself, much like you've said there, if we were to sign Donnarumma, we'd almost have to caveat the entire signing by saying, look, it's going to probably be another 12 months. Now, you can think about that two ways. You can think about it, as you've suggested there, that it's something that would delay us 12 months, but you can also think about it in a way that if we didn't get a keeper in, it's going to be Karius for another 12 months. So, you know, it's if ands or buts, really. Like, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, but I think there's a much greater potential upside to the likes of a Donnarumma.
Yeah, and he certainly, I suppose, with what we're seeing now with what Alisson's been quoted, and he really doesn't look like a £70 million goalkeeper, in my opinion. From what I've, watching the 3 Brazil games, he not to be desired with that transfer figure. Surely there has to be other goalkeepers out there, though. I know Donnarumma is young. He is the type of player, that FSG would sign simply because of his age and the return on investment they would get back from him. But we've been linked with so many different goalkeepers. I think it's going to be really interesting to see exactly who we do sign. I do think we're in for a goalkeeper. I have no doubt about that, because Mignolet is going, Danny Ward is making shapes that he's going as well, and Bogdan has been released. So where does that leave? That leaves us with maybe... Yeah.
So we have to sign a goalkeeper in that regard, don't we? So it's a given that we're going to sign one. So it's whether we break the bank and sign a nailed-on first choice, or we buy somebody to challenge Karius, or to give competition to Karius, or to sit behind Karius and watch Karius play, and we go with Karius for the season. But the thing is all Liverpool fans at the moment, they all want this one world-class goalkeeper who is going to see us for the next 10 years, and I fully understand that. But if you want that, that means you're signing either De Gea, Courtois, Oblak, or bringing in maybe an older head like there's Neuer as well.
Where do I sign, Chris? I'll take any of them. Where do I sign?
Yeah, but we all know that's not going to happen, because we're not going to part with the kind of money that those players would command. And let's say that, like De Gea, straight off the bat, that's not going to happen. I mean, I don't even need to tell you the reasons why. Courtois, it's a possibility, but it's still going to be big money. Does he want to go to Real Madrid? Oblak, I think he's just quite happy where he is. I think Atletico Madrid will do everything they can to price anybody out of a move. So I don't think that will happen. Neuer's quite happy where he is. So, right, I've just given you probably the top 4 goalkeepers in the world there. Name me another one, really. I mean, we're all bang on about Alisson. And like Dave's just said there, had anybody ever really sat and watched 90 minutes of that guy and seen a £70 million goalkeeper? How many times have I said he's just not worth the money? He's got all the attributes that suggest he could be a good goalkeeper for us.
I've had a cheap option up my sleeve, Chris, that I think I've mentioned before, and I mean relatively cheap, but he's an aging keeper. But Handanovic has always been a goalkeeper at Inter that I thought could do a job for anybody.
Yeah, good goalkeeper, and that's all we need, just a good, solid goalkeeper. Now, the world's full of them. It really is. Just because you've not heard of them or I've not heard of them, you know, I hadn't heard of Pepe Reina before we signed Pepe Reina. I hadn't heard of De Gea before United signed him. I hadn't heard of Courtois before he was signed by Chelsea. I hadn't heard of Peter Cech before he was signed by Chelsea.
Surely you heard of David De Gea and Courtois during their days at Atletico.
No, he just wasn't prominent, you know. And this is the thing. We want a prominent goalkeeper. We want to go and sign a world record fee on a prominent goalkeeper. When really none of these goalkeepers were signed as prominent goalkeepers. They weren't. None of them were. And it's just not a position where people go out routinely and spend world record fees.
It's a good show.
It just doesn't happen.
When was the last time it did happen? And I don't mean the world record being broken. I mean, as you've suggested.
Buffon.
Yeah, that's the last one I could honestly think of as well.
And, well, mate, what was Edison? Did Edison break that? I think
Edison broke it, but I wouldn't have called him at the time. I wouldn't have. If you had asked me for the top 5 keepers in the world, he wouldn't have made my list at the time.
I just think that was largely Man City having the money to spend and wanting the goalkeeper and going getting him. I think that's just that. But you know, I think Buffon, he wasn't high profile, was he? So I think Buffon was probably the last one. And you know, I'm going back even further. Probably the best goalkeeper the Premiership's ever seen, Peter Schmeichel. Who had heard of him before United signed him? It just doesn't happen, and I don't see this happening. And there is that possibility we could lead into next season with Karius, although I don't see that happening either. But I think we're all going to have to just perhaps accept that we're going to sign a goalkeeper that, offhand, we probably think isn't our goalkeeper for the next 10 years, but just may well end up being like Pepe Reina was.
Where do you guys, we were talking about keepers there that move for, you know, at the top of the game or for big money. I'm just trying to think back through like you were, Chris. The nearest thing I can think of, although he was probably on the decline, was Petr Cech going from Chelsea to Arsenal.
Well, yeah, I mean, you've got to look at his age and that. He had declined quite a lot, hadn't he? You know, he was high profile, but sort of on a downward curve. And, you know, look at him last season, he was quite awful, actually, wasn't he? But it's just not a glamorous position, and we sort of, at any given time, you can only really think about maybe 4 or 5, you know, a good small handful of top players in that position at any given time around the world.
What would your criteria be, Chris? Because if we were to talk about a Liverpool goalkeeper, so if we're going to like reverse engineer this, and we're going to invent, like, if we always spoke about if you could go into a factory and make a manager for Liverpool, you'd come out looking like Jurgen Klopp pretty much. So if we were to deconstruct the goalkeeper here and talk about the major attributes that would fit into what we want or what Jurgen Klopp would want, what do you think they would be?
Well, I can really shorten that answer by just saying peak Pepe Reina. Pepe Reina was playing in the wrong side. If you'd have taken peak Pepe, Mignolet would have probably been a good goalkeeper in the side that Pepe Reina played in, because he didn't have to do anything other than shot stop. Take Pepe Reina out of that Liverpool side and put it in this one. He's a completely different animal. Not only is he a top-class goalkeeper, but he's like another forward for us with the level of distribution he's got. And I would say that Karius, in terms of his skill set, is actually somewhere near that. He's just not consistent enough, and he has got mistakes in him. So that is really the type of keeper we're looking for. All I would say is, at this moment in time, I think what we can't do is risk throwing results away, because we are sort of aiming for trophies now. You know, we made the Champions League final. We're going to be looking here at this point, really, to start mounting a title challenge, and every result counts. So I think all we need at the moment is moreover is a safe pair of hands. Yeah, I think that's really all we need.
It's a great shout, the Peperina shout there, wrong team. A brilliant shout. I couldn't agree anymore.
It's a shame, isn't it? I mean, if you're even looking around now, I can't, off the top of my head, think of, other than obviously Manuel Neuer, who was probably the greatest sweeper keeper ever, I can't really think of anybody else. But you know who's impressed me during the World Cup, and I'm not in any way suggesting Liverpool go and sign this guy, just someone I'd never seen before who's actually really impressed me, was the South Korean keeper. I just thought he was crazy flexible, crazy enthusiastic, really good distribution, and seems a very, very good shot stopper. I don't know if you guys remember, if you watched much of the South Korean team.
I've seen a couple of the games. Again, he does actually look a good goalkeeper. And again, imagine we went out and signed him next week, for example. You know, everybody would be massively underwhelmed, but there's absolutely no reason on God's green earth why he couldn't go on and be a top-class goalkeeper. You know, you've not heard of somebody until you've heard of them. If, like, I know it sounds really simple, but that's the way it works, isn't it? You know, footballers, nobody, you know, you don't hear about Lionel Messi the day Lionel Messi's born. He has to grow up. He has to learn to play football. He has to learn the game. He has to own in on all of his abilities and everything. He has to break into a first team somewhere and start performing before you hear of him. You know, and then it's the same with any player. You know, it's almost like nobody's allowed to progress or allowed to come from nowhere and be a star just from nowhere anymore. And I don't like that about football at the moment. So, you know, it's very much we want this guy, we want him now, and anybody else isn't good enough. That's strictly not true, is it? It really isn't. So it could just be a goalkeeper like that we sign, and he could just end up being awesome. And that's perhaps how I see it going.
Do you ever want your goalkeepers to be noticed anyway? Not really.
Well, no. I mean, similar to like a referee in a game, you know, they've had a good game when you haven't noticed that they're there, you know, unless they've had absolutely pulled off a real worldy save or something, or saved a penalty. You know, it's such a horrible and difficult decision, and you've got to put a lot of trust in Klopp and his team to speak to these players and understand what they're about as a person and whether they've got the kind of personality. You know, you can have the right personality and have not played for a big club and played in big games like Champions League finals, but you might have the right personality and have no problems being put in those situations. You know, we have to bear that in mind, don't we?
I'm really interested to see where this one ends up, guys, and we're gonna have to leave it there because time has beaten us. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks, and I'm really excited to see how crazy this transfer window gets once the World Cup comes to an end, because it's going to be 3 weeks in my mind of absolute bedlam, with clubs racing around trying to get deals done, players' holidays being hijacked, and I can't wait to see how it happens. But look, thank you to Dave and thank you to Chris for taking the time joining me. Chris, I know you're over in the Isle of Man, mate, so thank you for finding an internet signal for starters.
It's hard work, that was.
And also to the listeners, thank you all for listening again. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, welcome. This will probably be the first Anfield Agenda podcast that will be going out on Spotify. So if you haven't listened to us on Spotify yet and you have a Spotify subscription, well, follow us on there and you'll get all our latest content. Until next time, folks, thank you all for listening, and up the Reds.